Hi, everybody. Welcome. Uh, Welcome to our online discussion of March 13, 2015. This is Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet, and I'm the assistant director, Christian Debré. Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a project of Council of Canadians with Disability to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability right opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other end-of-life practice that discriminate against people with disabilities. There are many reasons to oppose the legalization of assisted suicide and euthanasia. Here are just a few. It's unnecessary. Everyone has the option to commit suicide or to refuse medical care and have palliative sedation on demand already.
Right.
No
new laws necessary.
Yeah. It's discriminatory. While people without disability receive suicide prevention services if they express a wish to die, people with disability will be encouraged and assisted to kill themselves. Choice is an illusion. The choice to die cannot be free as long as people with disability don't have the choice in where and how to live.
Right.
And safeguards don't work. Where these practices are legal, safeguards do not prevent people from disability from being wrongly killed. Goal on the online discussion: give disabled people place to talk about these issues from our point of view. Recognize the effect of discrimination on our experience with the medical system, and establish our place in the debate aside from conservative and progressive. Today's topics: assisted death. What could possibly go wrong?
Okay. Thanks. Oops. Let's close the document. Okay, so what could possibly go wrong with assisted death? Well, a lot of things. Supporters of assisted suicide paint a picture of medical killing as a celebration of life, followed by a peaceful passage from life to death.
With their family,
right,
and
all
their
around,
loved one,
and everybody
and
happy, and everybody's lovey-dovey, and nobody gets in fights, and probably the image of that was, Brittany Maynard, the lady last fall who was very pretty, and she wanted assisted suicide, and she did that. But the question is this a realistic image of what really happens? So if the people with disabilities or people who ask for assisted suicide in Oregon say that they want to die for the following reason: loss of autonomy, loss of ability to do activities that they enjoy, loss of what they call dignity, and feeling like a burden.
Dignity, like the guy called Pierre in the Journal de Montréal.
Yeah. We talked about last week and the week before a guy who was in a Montreal hospital who's starving himself to death, and he feels like he's lost his autonomy, and because he can't work, he doesn't feel like he has dignity. So that's one of the reasons he's letting himself starve to death.
He's not at his end of life. He's not so sick that he couldn't move, but he let themselves die.
Right.
By starvation.
Right. And the reasons people give are all related to the onset of disability. They're all social reasons, and they have to do with the person's physical environment, the available support services, the family relationships, the support system, and his self-esteem and beliefs about disability. And all these are social factors that are influenced by the way society treats people with disabilities.
Medical reason.
Right, exactly. Right.
No pain.
It has nothing to do with pain, has nothing to do with the person that's dying, even though people who support assisted suicide always say, well, the people are dying anyway. And that's what they talked about in in Quebec a lot when they passed the law. Oh, they're dying anyway, so blah, blah, blah. But that's not the reasons people give.
Most of the time, it's not true.
And all these problems are not solved by dying. And the person leaves behind a family that has the same problems, you know, they had before the person died. So how is that solving any problems?
Sometimes it's even worse.
Right, exactly. There's very little information on what happens behind closed doors when a person receives medical aid to die. There have been very few studies on that. But some things we do know, that elders and people with disabilities experience very high rates of abuse, much higher than the general public. So between 2 and 10% of elders say they are abused. And this figure probably doesn't reflect the full extent of the problem.
It's a very low figure.
Right, right, because no one wants to admit that they are vulnerable, and many people are embarrassed by the fact that they've been victimized.
Remember Saint-Charles-Borromée.
Yeah.
All of the patients, over 600 people was abused, all. And just a few months ago, in Ile Verte, there is a house who burned because, and almost nobody got out because there was no prevention at all, no firefighter, no automatic water sprinkler,
yeah.
No nothing. So they died.
Yeah, and this happens, abuse from institutions happens everywhere. In the United States, there have been long court cases to prevent it, and people are becoming more aware of the problems of elder abuse. But even so, elders don't like to talk about it. And so the information we have, there's not enough information. So even if it's just financial abuse, oftentimes the family will become physically abusive as well and neglect the person. And the abuse of disabled people can be as high as 50%, depending on the kind of disability and the setting. So, for example, people who have an intellectual disability or a mental health problem or who are deaf have very high rates of abuse, especially in institutions. And because they're not believed and because they have communication problems, they're
so they are an easy target.
Yep, easy targets and high rates of abuse. So these are some of the factors that make people feel desperate and lower their self-esteem and make them feel like they'd rather die. Also, the physical part of the life-ending process can go wrong. A study published in the year 2000 in the New England Journal of Medicine gathered data from 3 other researchers and looked at the problem with the administration of assisted suicide and euthanasia in the Netherlands. So the study looked at 114 assisted suicides and 535 euthanasia deaths. And it was
a very good sample.
Right, it was a pretty good sized sample. And these were deaths done by general practitioners, specialists, and nursing home doctors.
Real doctor,
right.
Not anybody.
Right, exactly. Because in Oregon, the person takes the prescription home, that's the last anyone hears about it. In the study, they evaluated the effectiveness of different methods, such as injection, oral, in other words, swallowing, or rectal administration, so using a suppository to give drugs, and different drugs, such as barbiturates and opiates. And in the study, they found 3 different kinds of problems. The clinical problems were things like being unable to find a vein to do an injection, or that the person had a hard time swallowing the pills.
It happened a lot of times.
Right. This happened in 5% of the euthanasia deaths and in 10% of the assisted suicides. So 1 in 10 of the assisted suicides had a hard time even getting the medication in. Then there were complications like vomiting, spasms, gasping, or choking. happened in 3% of the euthanasia deaths and 7% of the assisted suicides. And then finally, there were problems with the completion of the death, where a person took a long time to die or awoke from a coma. And this happened in 5% of the euthanasia deaths and 15% of the assisted suicides.
Just think about the guy in Texas who was killed by injection, and it takes more than 1 hour to die.
Right, and there were
with
several cases like that.
Professional executioner, a medical executioner, and it take close to 2 hours to die. It was awful.
Right.
And by a professional. What happened when it's a generalist who doesn't exactly know what they do, even if he's doctor?
Right, exactly. In 21 of the 114 assisted suicides, the doctor finally gave a lethal injection because of the problems that happened. And in 37 of the people took a long time to die, and 7 people actually awoke from their comas. So that's 37 of the 100, total of the 649 cases. 37 woke up, took a long time to die, so more than 10 minutes. And then 7 of people, in addition, woke up from the coma. So that was not a success.
It wasn't killed, it was put in coma, and after, I don't know, a day or 2, they just wake up.
Right.
And
am I dead yet?
Yeah, and sometimes with damage to their brain, which is not good at all.
Right, right. It wasn't their intention.
No.
2 other studies of assisted suicide and euthanasia in the Netherlands were also talked about in this report. And they found problems with 12% and with 7% of the deaths. And first study was 12% and the second was 7% of the deaths, which are pretty wide differences. A study in the US in 1998 found problems in 3 out of 20 medically assisted deaths, and that's about 15%. So that goes along with the
other numbers.
Right.
They are anyway around 10% and sometimes higher.
Well, 15%, yeah. On the other hand, studies in Washington and Oregon in 1996 and 1999 found no problems with assisted suicide. And that seemed a little odd, but I think there are a few reasons for that.
When you know how it's made in Oregon, there's no special reason, you know.
Right. Right. In Washington and Oregon, assisted suicides are not supervised by a doctor or a disinterested party, nor is any report required. So the doctor fills out the prescription, gives it to the person, but after that, there's no tracking of what happens.
Anything could happen.
Anything could happen. So the person could lose the prescription on the way to the pharmacy, or
he could sell it.
Right, he could get the prescription filled, and his nephew could steal the pills and sell them on the street.
Yeah, one by one.
Right.
Not the 100 at a time.
Right, exactly.
It's a good money.
Right, exactly. Or, you know, the person might say, I want to have this just in case things get too bad, but the family might decide, hey, well,
we need the money rush
right now,
in
so
rush, yeah.
let's help this guy out. And so they
poor uncle,
yeah,
poor rich uncle.
Right. So they sneak it into his food, into his pudding, and then poor uncle drops dead. So also in Oregon and Washington, there are groups that advocate for assisted suicide, and they are present at more than 70% of the deaths under
They are
those
not
state
neutral.
laws. Right.
And
Exactly.
another reason for not reporting things going bad.
Right, exactly. So because they do the referrals, they find the doctors, they find the pharmacists, they help the people, and they show up even at the deaths. And so that increases the likelihood that any report of what happened is going to be biased, because obviously they don't want to show that there are any problems. So they're going to say, oh, yes, it went fine, no problem. And there have been one person from one of those groups was accused of holding a pillow over somebody's head because the person didn't die right away. So, but it turned out they couldn't gather enough evidence to prove it. Not that it didn't happen, but they couldn't get the evidence to prove it.
But anyway, the person was wanting to die.
Right.
So they helped them.
Right, exactly.
If you call it help.
Right, exactly. What if the person changes their mind at the last minute, or, you know,
a doctor told me once, and it's very brutal, sorry, that when you euthanize somebody and you have the right to euthanize, you could use anything, including a gun.
Right.
But it's very brutal. I doesn't think that they will do that. But
right.
It will be legal. They will not be able to be sued.
Right, exactly. I was not able to find any other studies after the year 2000 about the clinical problems with assisted suicide and euthanasia. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think that, first of all, doctors don't want to talk about this because this is not a part of their job that they like. And also, when mistakes happen or when problems happen, it creates a really ugly situation. And also,
and they bury their fault.
Right, exactly. They don't report the problems, they bury the problems. And also the people who push assisted suicide don't want these stories to come out. So they also try to bury this information, and there aren't a lot, people can't get funds to do these studies. So the problems that we've talked about, both the clinical and the social problems, give us a good reason to reconsider this idea of a peaceful death by assisted suicide. So, you know, we need to think about fights over inheritance, whether there's abuse, whether there are family squabbles or disagreements, and the idea that somebody tried to swallow 100 pills and can't do it, or that they vomit the pills up or choke or go into spasms or wake up from a coma. None of that fits in with this picture that the supporters paint of, you know, going pleasantly
peaceful
into death.
And pleasant death.
Right.
There's no pleasant death.
Right.
Death is not pleasant, whatever the way it happened.
Right, and it's a fairly substantial percentage of the people who have these physical problems. And in a situation where it's assisted suicide without a doctor around to, you know, administer the coup de grace, somebody could be in a really bad way for a long time. So that's it's not a very pretty picture. So, you know, the supporters are selling this idea, but I think we need to be careful about what we're being sold. So, there are a lot of ways to be in touch. If you want to watch our videos, you can search for euthanasia and disability on either the Google Hangouts, Google Plus site, or on YouTube. If you want to participate in our session, you can send me your email address and I'll send you a link to join us live during the discussion. Also, for more information on the subjects that we talk about here, you can visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet. You can visit our website at tvndy.ca. Email me at info@tv-ndy.ca, or visit, you can follow me on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks very much for being with us, and thanks to Christian for helping out.
Okay, and thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks.
See you.
Goodbye.
Take care. You. Yeah.
No.
Hope you go.